Hello and welcome to my third video on the Tarp Tent ARCDOME Ultra. Definitely have a look at my other two videos because this video is just a summary video, and also I was out and I've done another campiness video, and a couple of things that have about the tent have kind of come to light that I want to share with you now. Alright, so what about this Ultra fabric? I have two Tarp Tent Scarp ones. One is made from Sil Nylon, one is made from Ultra. I bought the Sil Nylon one first and then I bought the Ultra one first and then I bought Sil Nylon. And I think after now using the tents, I have sort of come to the conclusion that I do prefer the Ultra fabric. I mean, it just feels so strong. It's completely rigid, it's ready to go right from the factory. It doesn't absorb any water. And it is next generation. It just feels a step ahead of the Sil Nylon. The Sil Nylon's still pretty good, but I've now decided, yes, I would prefer this. And if I was selling one of my scarps, I'd sell the Sil Nylon and keep the Ultra. Now another feature here, I really like all the construction on this, the way that the likes of this is done, the way this is done, and I'll show you now the sort of pull sleeves and all the reinforcement of the fabric. It just feels really, really strong and feels exactly what it should do for a 4-season tent. So I appreciate Tarp Tent, and I really like the innovation that they're coming up with a new fabric and are continuing to produce more and more tents with this fabric. So it must actually be working pretty well, and I do like it. Okay, so I know another reviewer highlighted the fact that the pull sleeve here is not continuous. In my experience, even if the pull sleeve here is continuous, there's always difficulty getting the pulls to cross over. So I actually don't mind this at all because it just frees this up. And when the pull then comes to the point at which it sticks, which it always does at crossing points, you can then just easily access the other pull sleeve and pop it through. So personally for me, I don't see that as an issue. Okay, so this next bit is possibly the most important bit of this video because I had a practical issue with a tent, and it turns out it was entirely my fault, but I just couldn't work it out and understand it at the time. And I'm going to try and talk you through this as best I can. So this was whenever I was actually up on my last camp. So here goes. Whenever you pitch the tent, this door will obviously be closed, and you pitch it and you go around and you adjust and you get everything really, really tight, and you adjust the guy lines, etc., etc. Then what happens is when you actually loosen the door, you notice that because this fabric doesn't stretch, that it actually loses a load of tension. And then when you loosen the door off, you then actually end up, you go round and you'll notice the guy line here, can take a lot of tension, and the pole at the bottom here has lost tension, and then you pull and then you adjust that. So you do that, it's all set up, everything seems okay, and then you decide, right, I'm going to close the door over. And you go to close the door over, and I'm not going to force it anymore, but you actually can't, there's too much tension on the zipper, you can't actually get the door closed. And then you have to go around and you have to loosen everything off. So I would, give me a second then, just to do up this as fast as I can. So in order to prevent that from happening, you either need to have the actual footprint and have the footprint tightened up pretty tight so that it then effectively stops this pull. When you tension the pull here, it stops the pull actually being pulled out. Or if you don't have the footprint, you can actually have like the freestanding or fly sheet only kit, and that's just a little toggle or line lock and the actual cord here, and it stops the poles being pulled apart, and it just keeps the tension on the door, whenever it's open. Because the tent itself here is actually on bungees, and the bungees here are not enough to stop the pole from slipping out whenever you actually open the door. When I say slipping out, I just mean moving out. So I do think it's important, just because I had an issue with it, but it was entirely my fault. And just now that I've learned the product and I see what the sort of fix is, and I've done it, and it just works perfectly. From this camp, there's a few other things that came up as well, and they're actually definitely big positives. So the tent here was set up, and it was set up, I actually set the tent up in 30-mile-an-hour winds. And there's quite a lot of fabric in this tent, and the poles did get a bit of a kicking, to say the least. But you know what, I've examined them, and honestly I feel if they would have been aluminium poles, they would have bent or stayed bent, and I've examined the poles, and the poles are still perfect. So these carbon poles, I don't know how they last long term, but certainly based on that one experience, they had a lot of flexing and there's no damage to them at all. They've done really well. So I'm sort of a big fan of these poles at the moment. And if they work out long term, then that would be just completely amazing. The other aspect was purely the weather resistance itself. So in measured 30-mile-an-hour winds, the tent wasn't under any pressure whatsoever. I mean, you can see it here, and it performed flawlessly. So I was actually really impressed with that. The way I'd set up the guy line system with the rings, which I'd explained in the other video, that was the end that I had into the wind, and it was stabilizing and working really, really well in the tent. All right, so look, what are my final thoughts on this Tarp Tent ARCDOME Ultra? The bottom line is this: I really like it and would completely recommend it. I like the poles, the carbon poles, because I've had a really good experience with them, albeit not over a long period of time, but certainly in respect of their strength on a particular outing. You know, I really, really like them. I really like the fabric because of its non-stretch, and as I've worked out here, provided you know how to manage it, the fabric is really, really, really good. It feels strong and very well made and very four-season capable. I like the build quality and I like the construction. I like the interior space. There's very little really that I don't like about this tent. It doesn't suit my particular needs because it's a bit too big for one person, and I always just go camping on my own. So that's, if there was a one-person version, yeah, I think I honestly would be buying it, and I'll be looking for that coming out. I think the vestibules are also good. And yeah, you know, I can't really say much to criticize it. One thing I will say is, if you go for the footprint, which is double silicone coated, and the floor here is double silicone coated, I should say, the two surfaces are just very slippy. That's not really, I mean, the silicone really helps with the waterproofing and the durability, but certainly when you have a silicone footprint and the floor, you know, I know you can obviously put beads of silicone and things on the inside of the floor, but just if you're certainly camping on uneven ground, it's just, you know, slippy enough. But apart from that, I actually can't really find fault in the tent. I mean, it'd be nice if Tarp, I'm not sure whether they will in the future, but if you're buying a tent without a footprint, it would be nice if they sort of supply you with this little kit with the cord there that stops the poles going apart, because that is something that you will actually need. So that's really about it. Thank you very much for watching and taking the time to watch, and until the next time.